Good morning and welcome to Breakfast with Louise Minchin and Dan Walker.
Our headlines for you today: a terror attack in the Austrian capital, Vienna. 3 people have been killed, many are injured, and at least 1 gunman is still on the run.
Regular coronavirus tests for everyone in Liverpool. It's the government's first mass testing pilot involving a whole city.
The campaign to allow grassroots sports to continue during lockdown. Children's sport outside school will have to stop for 4 weeks, but there are hints this morning that some tennis and golf could be allowed.
Good morning. They've invested big to keep cash flowing through a winter of restrictions. What happens now to the businesses which won't see a customer for 4 weeks or more?
Voting day in the US presidential elections as millions head to the polls. Businesses in the major cities take precautions against violence in the aftermath.
And it's a day of sunshine and showers here in the UK, but there is something dry on the horizon. I'll have the full forecast here on Breakfast.
Hello, very good morning. Tuesday, November the 3rd. Our main story for you. 3 people are known to have died and many more are injured after gunmen opened fire in the centre of the Austrian capital, Vienna.
The country's chancellor has described it as a repulsive terror attack. Police have arrested 1 suspect and shot dead another, but are still searching for at least 1 gunman. Mark LaBelle has more.
Austrian police order people to take cover. News of an incident emerged just before 8 last night, with reports of several gunmen armed with rifles opening fire in 6 locations. One witness recalls what he saw.
We didn't know what was going on, to be honest. The only thing we heard of was the firecrackers, the sound of firecrackers. And then we only saw what happened sort of afterwards. We saw there were policemen in the street next to our restaurant. We saw there were ambulance, lining up next to our restaurant. We saw there were victims who seemed harmed in a way.
It unfolded in a vibrant district of Vienna, opposite a synagogue which was closed at the time. It's not clear if that was a target. It comes a night before a new 8 p.m. coronavirus curfew kicks in for cafes and restaurants there. Austria's chancellor has called it a repulsive terror attack.
We
are living here in Austria and particularly in Vienna through difficult hours. We are victims of an appalling terrorist attack in our capital, which is still ongoing. I want to thank the emergency services. They are risking their lives to secure our safety.
Boris Johnson has tweeted that he is deeply shocked by the terrible attacks, telling the people of Austria the UK stands united with them against terror. Police are still searching for at least 1 suspect still at large. They're urging people to stay at home or avoid public transport if they're out on the streets. Austria's Interior Minister described this as the hardest day for the country for several years. As the manhunt continues for at least 1 heavily armed and dangerous attacker, the special forces are also looking beyond the capital. Mark LaBelle, BBC News.
Well, let's get the very latest on this from our correspondent Damien McGuinness, who's in Berlin for us. And this is very much an ongoing situation. What's the latest?
Yeah, that's right. Schools have been closed and the authorities are still saying to people in Vienna to avoid the city centre. The latest confirmed information from police is that at least 3 people are now dead, 2 men, 1 woman. The suspect's apartment is right now being searched. The Interior Minister has just said that he says that one of the suspects, presumably the man who was shot dead, has links to IS. So the authorities are now confirming this does appear to have been an Islamist attack, because that was the big question until now. What we knew is that there had been 6 places where the attack had been carried out. One of those places was near a synagogue, and it was not clear if that played a role. Right now, going forward, though, the real question is that at least one other person is on the run. So it's still potentially a dangerous situation for people in Vienna.
OK, well, thank you for the update, and we'll check in later. Thank you.
Now, regular coronavirus tests are going to be offered to everyone in Liverpool from the end of this week in the government's first mass testing pilot involving an entire city.
Our troops will help carry out rapid turnaround tests on about 500,000 people who live or work in Liverpool, even if they don't have symptoms. Our political correspondent Nick Eardley reports.
Many of us have taken tests like this in the last few months. The government thinks they're going to be crucial to controlling the virus in future. Yesterday, they hit a target with 500,000 daily tests available. And from Friday, a new mass testing scheme is being rolled out here in Liverpool, where the number of cases is among the highest in England. Everyone, even those without symptoms, will be offered a regular test. 2,000 armed forces personnel are being deployed to help in what the Prime Minister hopes will be a new weapon against the virus. Boris Johnson was in Parliament yesterday to explain his plans for a new England-wide lockdown, coming into force for a month from Thursday.
The modelling presented by our scientists suggests that without action we could see up to twice as many deaths over the winter as we saw in the first wave. Faced with these latest figures, there is no alternative but to take further action at a national level.
He said the measures would end in 4 weeks and it would be up to MPs what happened next.
Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer.
But he's faced claims that he waited too long to act.
As a result, this lockdown will be longer than it needed to be, at least 4 weeks. It will be harder. We've just missed half term, and the human cost will be higher.
Labour will, though, back the measures in a vote tomorrow, so they will almost certainly pass. Not that everyone is happy with the strategy.
A 4-week period that must be used wisely. A time to, as has been said, sort out, test and trace. But frankly, I also think those 4 weeks are for the government to reboot itself, both in its policy and operation, and I dare say for us all to take that attitude as well.
Can the Prime Minister demonstrate to me that the damage that will be caused to East Sussex by locking down on our economy, on liberty, on lives, on livelihoods would be a lot worse were we to do absolutely nothing?
So England is heading for another lockdown, but there remain questions over the cost and the longer-term exit strategy. Nick Eardley, BBC News, Westminster.
Well, let's speak to our political correspondent Jessica Parker, who is in Downing Street for us this morning with a lovely umbrella as well. Good morning to you. So there still seems to be a bit of confusion over the detail with regards to this lockdown, isn't there?
Yeah, there are a few details yet to be hammered out. So one example is we were given to believe by Downing Street yesterday that golf and tennis wouldn't be allowed under the new lockdown measures for England coming into force on Thursday. But then very senior Cabinet Minister Michael Gove, speaking last night to the Surrey Residents Network, said that people probably could continue to play singles tennis and allow people to play golf as well with one person. So details like that, it seems, are still being resolved. And then there's this very significant issue as well of furlough. Boris Johnson faced numerous questions yesterday as to whether the furlough scheme, where the government's now stepping in again to pay 80% of people's wages when they can't work, whether if Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland went into a lockdown in future, that the government would extend the furlough scheme again for those areas. He seemed to confirm that the government would last night, speaking to Douglas Ross, the leader of the Scottish Conservatives. We're still waiting for some confirmation from the Treasury on that. But look, having said all of that, Cabinet meeting here later this morning. Maybe they'll be hammering out a few of those details. And we've got an urgent question being put by Labour later today in the House of Commons about the economic support package.
OK, thank you very much for that. We'll be speaking to the Community Secretary, Robert Jenrick, at 7:30 this morning. We've had loads of questions from you about what you can and can't do in England when lockdown starts on Thursday.
Yep, and a little bit later we'll try and get some answers. We'll speak to our panel of experts just after 8. They've got lots more information for you. The Wales football team have cancelled a news conference after what the Wales FA described as an alleged incident involving the manager, Ryan Giggs. He'd been due to announce the squad for 3 upcoming matches. The Wales FA said it won't be commenting further for now. Giggs has been manager of the Welsh national side since January 2018.
And the polls will open in the US later this morning as voters choose between President Donald Trump and his Democratic challenger Joe Biden.
Businesses in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., also in New York City, have been seen boarding up their premises due to concerns about unrest after the vote, potential unrest. Our Washington correspondent, Ben Wright, is in Washington, D.C. For us this morning, and they have been working hard, haven't they, both candidates, in the last few hours?
It's been a frenetic final day of campaigning here, and last time I looked, Donald Trump is still speaking at a rally in Michigan, and it's 1 o'clock in the morning there. I mean, he's taking this campaign to the wire in a frenetic effort to shore up his vote in some of those key swing states, mainly in the northeast of the US, that he narrowly won 4 years ago and really needs to keep if he's going to get a second term in the White House. So he has been extraordinarily busy the last week, turning up at rallies. Joe Biden at a different pace, and they're certainly very different events, socially distanced. He had a drive-through event in Pittsburgh at which Lady Gaga performed a few hours ago, and they're offering starkly different messages to the American electorate. Donald Trump saying 4 more years of pretty much the same. Joe Biden promising America that he will try and calm the temperature in this deeply divided country. And Joe Biden knows that he's going into Election Day, it seems, fairly comfortably ahead in the polls, but everybody here knows how wrong the polls were 4 years ago. And so, it is an unprecedented election for many ways, taking place in the middle of a pandemic. There is a lot of unease around the US about what happens in the hours and days after the election because of the number of postal ballots that need to be counted. It's possible that we don't get a result as we normally would soon after the polls close. It is shrouded in uncertainty, but there is clearly huge determination to take part by many Americans.
But thank you very much indeed. And coverage will start on the BBC. You're going to have hours of it. It's going to start tonight, of course, into the early hours of tomorrow, breakfast as well.
It's going to be a busy old night and a frenetic morning. Although, as Ben was saying there, might not know the actual result for a couple of days.
I'm not sure we can stay on air for a couple of days.
Yeah, might be a break here or there.
See the headlines as they happen and watch BBC News live in the app and get the full story with bbc.co.uk/news. Follow the story for all the latest with BBC News.